Okay, good afternoon. I just had some things to go over. I felt spiritually led to go ahead and do this for Cancer, just to get more in depth. I know I did individual readings, but just to get a feel, I think, of what season represents basically for all of us, regardless of sign. This is what I was felt led to do. So let's get started. Okay. Cancer, and let me just put up my picture again. So Cancer is the fourth sign in the zodiac, right? Okay. So what I did is, as a result, I just felt led to pull out all the fours that I had in that deck with this Cancer sign. Okay. So one of them was water, which we know that Cancer is a cardinal water sign. Has a 2-4 inside of it, which equals 6. 1 plus 3 also is 4, which is the sun of this same deck. I hope it's not too glary. Let me see. If so, let me see if I do this. Yeah, that might be better. Less glare. So now you can see it better. Okay. Okay. Also with the 1-4, which equals 5, is the moon card. Okay. So when I started seeing these, the first thing I started thinking of is like sun, moon, okay, and then rising, because of I know people say sun, moon, rising, okay, and I thought about the rising tide, when the rising tide is the water, okay, the water sign. So maybe that's why these numbers, but I was going off of just the numbers, and then that just came up as I was just kept looking at them. Okay, and then the next two equals 4. So maybe this is like, I don't know. I don't know what this would mean, but I just know that I was just pulling out, and that's what I felt led by the Holy Spirit to do. Right? With Cancer being 4, I just start looking up 4s. Okay? And when I looked up 4s, the first was like with the Egyptian, the Sumerian, the Hebrew alphabet. 4 is the Daleth, which you may or may not be able to see that part very well. When you see, turn that on. Maybe not. Okay, Daleth, which I spelled out, which is in most Eastern alphabets, vowels really aren't pronounced. So it really would be the T, the D, L, T in Daleth. DALET. Which DLT also, if you notice, looks like Delta, from the military, as well as it's the Greek word for 4. Okay, 4. Okay, it's for the fourth alphabet, A, B, C, D. The fourth, which is Delta. Delta in Greek means the highest star. Okay, the highest star. So immediately I thought about with the Messiah, because I do correlate a lot of things to Christ, and hope that that's not offensive, because I do read other things as well, and I will share those in a moment. But I do correlate mostly everything to Christ. So the Delta that made me think of, it says the highest star, and I thought about, well, what could be the highest star? And I thought about at the time of the birth of Christ, that's written in scriptures all around. There was a star. Okay, the star was basically pointing to the doorway. Being that Daleth means door, it's not just the number 4, but it means door. Okay, so it's a door. Okay, the other parts I'm not sure of. I just normally go by the numbers. But it means door, and I thought the star to the doorway pointing to Christ, or pointing to the Messiah. Okay, redemption. And that kind of ties in with with this particular, what is it, the week that we were leaving, and just the week is just fading out. That would be from the realm, as far as angels go and the tree of life, the Bina, and this last week that just passed would be angel number 20, which is Pahalai, okay? And he deals with redemption. There's more on him, and I'll try to like put some websites and whatever as far as the angels, but redemption. And then from there, the week goes into from July 2nd to the 6th, NELCHAEL, which is an ardent desire to learn. Okay? An ardent desire to learn. So I'm going to say those first: redemption, and then an ardent desire to learn. So let's just stick with that, right? So Dalet, when you add it up, the D, the L, the T, they equal 434. So I added 434, and then I got 11. Okay, which a lot of people love that 11. I do too, because the first thing I think of is in the book of Genesis about the patriarch Joseph. He was the 11th son of Jacob. Okay, so he was the 11th son of Jacob, but he was the cherished son, or the favorite son, right? But 11, 1 plus 1 equals 2. 2 in the Hebrew alphabet, or Phoenician, or many others. You can get the tables if you Google it. 2 is Bet. Bet. Okay. B-E-T. Bet. Where we get the B for the English B. Bet. Right? But Bet made me think of in India, Beta, which means daughter, and so does this. One of the translations for Bet is house or family. Okay, so that Cancer season is a lot about family, and it's obviously very feminine. So I think it may be also a time for many of us to really look at the divine feminine aspect of ourselves, really do some research, being that this is the cardinal sign. So right out the gate, really looking at, not just, a lot of times we associate the moon with mother. Okay, so moon, this card, mother, sun with father, right? Okay, so, and then ultimately all of us too, we as cells mutate, they become daughter cells too. The two cells, they mutate and become daughter cells. Okay, so when I added these, I got the 4, the 3, the 4. What I noticed is, okay, the 4 is the door. So between the door is 3. First thing I thought of, which is from the Sefer Yetzirah and the Kabbalah, the 3 mothers. Okay, that's what came to mind, the 3 mothers. So this is really maternal. Maybe there's some mothers and mother issues that need to be resolved or worked out. All women have the potentiality to be mothers, but first they are daughters. Okay, so not quite sure where all of that is going spiritually. This is like a starting point. Be really interesting, I guess, to start to really work with others and maybe find out more. Not sure. With the 3, what I thought of when I thought of the 3 mothers, I didn't just think of which in Hebrew is the Aleph, which is the first, denoting a lot of times where we get alpha. Okay, when they say alpha, or like in Revelations, the book of Revelations of the New Testament, and it says, Christ says, I am the Alpha and Omega, the Alpha, which is this silent kind of letter. Sometimes people attribute it to 0. Sometimes people who are, I guess, run, I think, along with more like Aleister Crowley and the tarot, I think they associate it with 1, and they give it the role of the magician. But in Judaism and the Kabbalah, it's generally 0. It's present in everything, but yet it doesn't really have like a number. Okay, so it's the 0. Some people also associate it with the fool. Okay, most rabbis and things. So you have the Aleph. The 3 mothers are the Aleph, which is like we given that the A, okay, as a vowel, and then Mem, which would be Im. It means water. So you have air, you have water, because Aleph is for air, and then Mem, which is for water. Shin, which means speech. Okay, Shin is almost towards the end of the alphabet. Shin, which means speech, but it's fire. Okay, so you have air, water, fire. Okay, and according to the Sefer Yetzirah, Aleph, air, is like the moderator between Mem and Shin. Okay. All right. So with the 3 mothers, I didn't just think of them from the Hebrew perspective. The other thing that came to mind was the 3 mothers of the Ramayana epic. Now the Ramayana epic is a Hindu epic. Okay. And there are 3 particular mothers. There's Kushalya, and I'm sorry if I don't pronounce it the right way. We all have things that we don't pronounce the right way. So Kushalya, Kaike, and Sumitra, something like that. So Kushalya is the mother of Rama. Rama is considered, because it's the Ramayana, he's the healer. I'm not the healer. He's the hero. Okay. He is the hero. And he incidentally also is the healer. And I'll share that with the story. Kaike, because there were 3 wives of Rama's father, the king Darash. I can't say the name right, so I won't say it because I don't want to mess it up. But Dara, it's a lot longer than that. It's like Darashta, Darashtra, something like that. This particular king, he had 3 wives. There was Kushalya, the mother of Rama, Kaike, the mother of Bharata, and then there was Sumitra. Okay, and she was the mother of Lakshman, which is the brother who goes with Rama when he is exiled into the wilderness. Okay, and this exile into the wilderness was at the request of the second wife, Kaike. Right? So let's read a little bit about that because I thought that was important, and I'm going to get into why in just a moment. Okay, with Kaike, she is known as fixing the chariot of her husband, Darashta. The wheel had broken. So this was interesting to me to read this because I've read this. I read the story a while back. So it's like a revisit. So I'm definitely going to really revisit because of this. Because I know that in the major arcana of the tarot, the number 7, which is the chariot, is often associated with you, Cancer. So, Kaike fixed the chariot of her husband. He was in a battle. She fixed the chariot. Okay, and when she fixed it and then she helped heal his wounds, bind up his wounds and get him bandaged, he said he would grant her 2 wishes or 2 requests. That 2, interesting. 2. And 2 is also about agreements and covenants as well. Okay. So he said he would grant her 2 requests. She was not ready to make them at the time. Sounds a little opportunist, right? So we have to really check in, I think, at this time. We might be getting different deals. We might be getting different things that we're really going to have to look into curbing. And I remember kind of saying some of that, I think, in a lot of the readings. So it's interesting for this to come back. And I think this is really on the lines of the Holy Spirit and what He's trying to reveal to us. That this particular time is a time of several things. One of them being people looking for opportunities in which to use our good graces, or a time when we were in a bind. And all of us get into a bind from time to time. But there are some people who look at those and see that as a particular opportunity in which to act, in which to bind us to themselves. Okay? So, she finally made her decision. And her decision wasn't so much based on her as it was on her servant. So, talking about opportunities, her servant that she had, there was a particular servant who lived a certain life of privileges because of this woman. Okay, so this woman was very fearful of Kusharia, in particular Rama. Okay, because Rama was the favorite, and definitely not just favorite as in he's the favorite because it's my first wife's. He did a lot of things as a person that were very honorable and venerable that would look worthy of a king. See where I'm going with this? Okay. Okay. Um. um. And so he did things that were very venerable in that regard and in that aspect. Now, when she finally made her wish, it was because of the things that her servant said. Well, if indeed Rama becomes king, that's going to demote your status and our privileges. Certain things you won't get because he's the king, he's in power. And that some people really do look at us from that perspective. Okay, we could have a good, gentle, generous heart, but we are dealing with a set of people who, he wasn't just because, like I said, he paid the price to have that favor in his father's eyes. This also makes me think of Joseph, as well as ultimately, I said to someone previously, we are in a Joseph year. You add up the numbers 2, 0, 1, 8, they equal an 11, and 11 equals 2. And the patriarch Jacob had 2 wives. Okay. He wanted to marry the second one first, 2. But incidentally, because of some trickery and some other things that went on, he married her older sister first. And then she became second, even though she was always first in his eyes. She was also the second to bear children. And when she did, the favor that he posed, Jacob, on her first child, caused a huge rift. His child being Joseph caused a huge rift. And after the second child, she died. Okay, lots of 2s in there, right? Okay. So, and then there's that 2 inside of the water. And that was incidentally also where Jacob and Rachel, that was Joseph's mother, that's where they met. In fact, it says that the stone, which is interesting because we got 2 2s right here, right? And it says that there was a stone that was by the well. And when they met and began to converse, the stone rolled away. Okay? The stone moved, which isn't really symbolically of a real stone, but like his heart. And look at how frozen up this guy is. I mean, icy, right? Could this be what he looked like? That ultimately Jacob went from this to this. He went to look like and full of warmth. And that the moon in itself, it also looks like a huge rock. And look how she's got the fire. The fire melts the ice. The rock moved from the water. Interesting. Okay. All at the behest of this lovely creature. Okay. And she began to also struggle when her sister was having children first. She had some struggles too. So this is a story about some things I think that are happening unfairly. that I think Cancer kind of represents, and it represents that time for us. That you may be the more suitable, but you may have to take a back seat. You may indeed take a back seat to people who are less savory, less qualified. And how's your character when that happens? Kushoya had a great character. She really thought these girls were her sisters. Even though, when Kaike did this was really, you know, um, it was really saddening. It was really sad to the king. So much so that they say that Kaike, this name, like when they are discussing like when most people who are familiar with the Ramayana epic, they hardly discuss her. Nevertheless, Rama venerated her. He restored her honor. Okay, because let me tell you what happened. Her request, when she had those two requests, there's two requests. She had two requests. The one was that her son Bharata be made king. Okay. The second was that Rama would be sent away into the forest, into the wilderness. Okay. So, and in there, they were sent via chariot, another chariot. So maybe this is how Cancer ends up getting linked to the chariot, which has the two horses, right? One maybe representing Rama, the other one representing Lakshman, because Sumitra's son, who was a twin, twins are two, Lakshman was a twin. So the two goes, okay, and because Sumitra, she tells Lakshman, go and serve Rama. So the two brothers, too, went into the wilderness together with the wife. So there's the three of them, between one door, between another door, because, the king, he was really stuck. He did make this promise to her. He didn't know it was going to cost him what it cost him. He was very upset. So then the three, like the three mothers, they leave. Okay, and the three is Rama, his brand new wife, Sita, and Lakshman. They go into the forest, the wilderness together. Okay. They were sent away, and I put in here, let's see, Rama was sent to the forest. This has secured her status as queen mother. So Kaike got to be queen mother because of this. And it was mostly through hearsay and the insecurity and jealousy of others. That there are some people, and yeah, they're going to be less qualified, they're going to be envious, they're going to be jealous, but they're going to be in the ear possibly of prominent people to make decisions that affect your life, possibly for the next, maybe for him it was 14 years. 1 plus 4 equals 5, and there's a 4 in there. And where's the 14? The moon. And maybe even the 14th, maybe a crucial day. Just looking at these, maybe 13, 14, even the 4th of July, which is to me not a coincidence. I'll go into that in a moment. But then here, the 24th, the 22nd, all of these have a 4 inside of them. Maybe they mean something significant. Maybe some significant things are going to happen. Some type of decisions like that may even be made. 1 plus 4 equals 5. And I went over 5, which 5 is Gebura or strength. Okay. I went over just a little bit. I will go over it another time in more detail. So we go from Pahalaya. Okay, like from 6/27 to July 1st, because I just associate July, the month of July, with Cancer. So going into that, we go from redemption, which there was redemption that happened because Kaike, when he finally returns, the king was angered, yet Rama forgives her, is what I put down. Ultimately, Rama he heals the whole family bitterness about him being departed, because everyone was upset, including Kaike, because actually it's known, this is how we know that it's due to the servant, because Kaike, it says in the Ramayana, loved Rama more than her own son. Actually, she always wanted to play with him and You know, he was much more fun to play with and engage. And the kingdom, when Rama finally returns, the kingdom is handed to him quite gladly from Bharata, because Bharata really was unqualified to do it, and he was really overwhelmed by doing it. So he was really glad to, oh man, I'm glad you are back. You are the rightful throne. You are the rightful heir to this throne. Okay? And Kaike, she was ashamed to face Rama, but he forgave her, and ultimately he venerated her by saying, you know what? All she was doing was for the betterment of her child, and all mothers do that. But ultimately, someone's going to be stepping off that way, and we have to look at them basically from that perspective, possibly. That's where our forgiveness comes in, is that they were doing what was for the betterment of their children. They were doing what's best for them. They wasn't really looking at you or even thinking about you from that perspective. And do we have a heart enough to forgive in that way? Because that can be very troubling when people make decisions that affect our kids, but they're doing it on the backs of the basis of in the progression of their own children. He says that to alleviate the fact that everyone agrees or feels ultimately she wasn't acting on behalf of Bharata, since she favored Rama, she could care less. That ultimately she really wasn't acting on behalf of Bharata, okay, but that she was ultimately trying to secure her own status, which inevitably was tied to the status of her servant. And that sometimes it may be just that cut and dry. But do we have some grace for people? So I put down, is that our challenge? To do what is best for our children. That may come up too. Then in this month, in this time, are you doing what's best for your children? Not just your children, other people's children? Because we're all responsible to one another in a way, in a great big way. What we do, what we decide, it affects others. That maybe there may be something that's required where we need to look beyond ourselves and look at our children and how this may affect our children. Okay, so I put that she made Rama, wife, and Lakshman wear clothes of tree bark and ride away in a chariot. So again, there's the chariot. The chariot is also associated with the patriarch Joseph. It's the first time we hear of one. The Merkaba. The chariot's a pretty popular thing. So the chariot and Cancer and women and daughters and people vying for position and status, and also possibly using the emotions of others. Like some of these things are going to possibly come up. They may be coming up. And Delta being the highest star to point the doorway to the Messiah. That our redemption, which the Messiah was the redemption, right? He's the redemption for all of us. Okay? That he saves us from all that. And that in that doorway, interesting enough, when that star was pointing the way, Delta, the star, the 4, when it was pointing the way to the door, they were rich and poor alike. They were rich, they were working, they were poor. As a new family starting out, Mary and Joseph were not rich. Okay. Represents 2 forms of father, like the sun, possibly, and also this here Pluto. Okay. Heavenly Father, as well as Joseph the carpenter. Another Joseph, besides the one with the 11. And us being an 11 year. And ultimately, even though he was the firstborn of the second wife, he could run things. He was qualified to run his family much better than the first son of the first wife. And that we possibly may be coming into some times where a lot of that's really going to come to head in how our character is affected and how we behave and how we act and how we respond. that may be crucial over the next couple of months, or even the majority of this month in particular. I thought what was also really phenomenal with the commandments. The fourth commandment is remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Remember and keep. That's also another 2. The Sabbath is the 7. And if you notice how I wrote this out because this is what Daleth as the alphabet, it looks like a 7. The 7 was the completion and the summit of the week. In creation in Genesis, that's when everything fell apart. So, not trying to be like a dismal forebodings or anything, but just being prepared that things may not happen the way that we expect, because surely it didn't happen with everything that was leading up to that day. What happened, Okay. I thought what was also really cool is because when I looked up today for the Tao Te Ching, the Tao Te Ching verse of the day is in chapter 57. 57, there's the 7. But 5 plus 7, it equals 12. Okay. The patriarch Jacob had 12 sons. And then 1 plus 2 equals 3. There's that 3 for the 3 mothers. Okay. Okay, while reading, and I just thought I would share it, what I found on that. The other thing I thought about too was that in the Gospels regarding Jesus' life, Matthew 4, the 4th chapter, it starts off with that Jesus was led by the Spirit to be tempted in the wilderness. Led by the Spirit to be tested by the devil. He was tested by the devil. And I thought about Rama. How when he went to the wilderness, that's when he ran into Ravan, which was the evil being and creature who kidnapped Sita. In the wilderness, just after his baptism. So I thought about that. That came up for me. Let's look at, and then also I looked at too, I thought was important. Well, if we're looking at the commandments, let's look at the Beatitudes. When Jesus first began to speak, the first one, or the fourth one, sorry. Blessed and favored by God are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. They shall be comforted. And Joseph, when he starts to have his children, one of the children, he names them, from a state of comfort. That, one is named like fruitful or double, Ephraim. He's made me bountiful, double, like a double portion. Double, meaning 2. That was the second son. But the first, he said, he's made me forget the sorrow of my father's house. What happened there? The first son. Okay. Comfort. That you will be comforted. Okay. So he was led by the Spirit. Also in chapter 4, Matthew chapter 4, Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness, into the wild, just like how Rama was in the forest, to be tempted by the devil 40 days. 40 equals 40 equals 4. Okay, equals 4. So there's that 434 for us. Okay, remembering and keeping is 2. The delta, the highest star. Okay. And so in that time, and then Cancer, just as itself, reading up on it a little bit more, because I'm not like an astrological or anything like that. It says it's the fourth, of 30 degrees. You see that 4 and 30, 434. It's the 4th of 30 degrees. Okay. And then one of the ways of treating which I thought was important. It's really nice. I was reading just on just the word in itself, cancer, as well. This is one of the ways of treating is with nanoparticles. Okay, nanoparticles. And I'm just going to list from Botanica.com some of the major. It says the particles. They're high mobility. So being able to move and move pretty rapidly. I thought of the chariot. That this is a treatment, like maybe that's why also it has that name. It's therapeutic. Being able to move rapidly. Okay, like they said, this is the way that they treat it or deal with the tumors. Okay, because tumors can be benign or cancerous. Ways that they treat. So I took it this is the way that I took it. This is a very small particle that as we humble ourselves, we come down, we can treat even that which is cancerous, tumorous, too much for us. So it's interrelated as follows. High mobility, being able to move, not being stagnant. I thought about the wheels of the chariot. And then also I think when I did the cancer reading, the wheel came up, I think, if I remember right. One of its other, they're all and it says that all these major physical properties of the nanoparticle that they're using right now to treat, was it CAR T cells or something like that? I read about it today. The nanoparticle has enormous specific surface areas. So surface area, okay? Surface area, on the surface, okay? It says a standard teaspoon of silica nanospheres is like triple or something like that, like double the size of like several tennis courts. That's pretty big. That's a lot of back and forth, movement. That's what I think this is showing. That where we feel stagnant, or sometimes we can feel slowed down even when we get news like that. There's someone less qualified, the less suitable candidate, the less suitable spouse, or something like that, or whatever. We're considered of all the children to be the lesser, but yet we're more qualified. But the treatment that we get, whether it's in a relationship, a business, the finances, and how our attitude will be about that. Okay, so lots of surface area. So I think that deals with too, like how we deal with things on the surface and how we deal with them in our heart beneath the surface, not just on the surface. And then it says they may also exhibit quantum effects. Quantum, that's scientific, right? Okay. So while I was doing over that, the 4th of the 30 as well, with the Tao Te Ching, let me go ahead and pull that up right quick so we can read what it says. Because today was the day of the 4th. Let me see. So let's go like this. Okay. And this one I'm reading from is called The Waterway Translation. Okay. And so this will be the 57th, and I'll read that. Let's see. Here we go. Okay. Now let's see. And it has both before and after Wu Wei Xing. Okay. So let me make sure I got the right one first. I'll read the first. Okay. Back here. Okay. 3. 57. Okay. If you are a ruler, rule straightforwardly, with simplicity and justice. If you are a fighter, fight with extreme unconventionality. Sorry. Conquer without acting. By the strange and sudden realization of the way things are, and yourself with them. rule without prohibiting, and the people will find a way out of poverty. When a kingdom is ruled badly, it is ruled with elaborate policies and schemes. This made me think of the thing with Kaike. When it's ruled badly, okay, laws multiply like mosquitoes. For every new law, there are 10,000 new criminals. That's scary. The true ruler rules without ruling. He does nothing, and the people naturally take control of themselves. He cultivates himself. So I think this is a real encouragement for us to start meditating, right? He cultivates himself, and the people become just. He stops interfering, and the people become independent. When each rules himself, the state is well governed indeed. Okay, and that was from the Tao Te Ching. Okay, so that was from the Tao Te Ching. The next that I read was with the Gita. Okay, I read the chapter 4 for the Gita, which deals specifically with karma. Okay, it deals with karma. Let me see. And what it says basically is, we don't earn any new karma by doing things not only for ourselves. This goes back to this story about for ourselves, but by doing things for the good of society. So when she made this decision, Kaike, and that we may be also challenged and we may be tempted to make similar decisions. Even when, Christ was being tempted, he could have made the decision for himself or for the greater good, which is the good of all. Okay? So, and I thought about also how when she made this decision, it really disturbed the king because he was being split from his son, his favorite son, his child. She was basically splitting up the family. And I thought about how with the Daleth being doors, our recent talks coming into coming into um, the month of July have been about doors, like the doors in America. So the doors are important, okay? And the doors being open, whether they're open or they're closed. And so ultimately, even with this here, with this decision, when she made the decision, the door for this son and this father to be with each other, that door was closed for 14 years. The same goes for Joseph, the patriarch Joseph, when he was split from his father. Okay. But, a lot of times, I think it's in the Sufi interpretation of Islam, when they talk about the patriarch Joseph, even though the door was closed on him, it talks about, I think, if I got it right, specifically, when his master's wife tries to seduce him, that he could see his father. He couldn't go to his father for advice. He couldn't go to his father for wisdom. However, he could see his father going, no, 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 not that. She was offering him position and even further promotion, trying to seduce him in secret with her power. And that we may be seduced with power. Maybe that's also a part of the story that it represents. But he didn't have like that easily access as he did before, that going always to his father. Instead, it said that his father appeared like spiritually. No, 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 no. Okay? So that door was closed for many years. And that sometimes we have to endure that. We have to endure a time of a door being closed, even though we may be the better candidate, okay? And then someone less savory taking that spot. And how are our attitudes? How do we adjust? How do we manage? How do we comport ourselves? This might be coming into play, coming up. That ultimately people are going to make some decisions that are more based on themselves and their own status and not for the good of all. And how, again, are we going to comport ourselves? So it talks about karma, that, we can, we come with karma, but then we can It says, as servants of God, we are all servants of God. It says this in the Gita. Therefore, we can erase the past karma that we came with spiritual knowledge. With spiritual knowledge, the spiritual knowledge frees us to unite with God, which is the nirvana. Nirvana, that's I think the way you say it, if I pronounce it right. And selfless service, selfless. So some areas where we are maybe being tested to be selfish, like Christ was in Matthew 4, lots of fours, but we could be selfish, okay, or we could do what's the good of all, okay. So it says, and this selfless service, actually stepping into that doesn't mean, oh, I attained it. Rather, it's what's preparing us for that unity with God. The more selfless that we are, and I think of that a lot of times too with like remembering the Sabbath, resting from the commotion, resting from the confusion, resting from that, keeping it holy, something being set aside, something being set apart, something being separated. Because that's what holiness really means, to separate something, designated as special. Okay? And that even in that time, look at how Rama's attitude was towards Kaike. He realized that ultimately this wasn't so much just manipulations and schemes, but, it was the time that he made of it. And that ultimately this is preparing me to really serve my kingdom, to really come back and be king. Okay? Okay. So it says about the unity, okay? Then it brings up a word that looks a lot like the Sabbath, which is about the seventh day, but it's the fourth law, okay, in the 10 commands that were given to Moses. Seva, like Sabbath, okay? Seva. Seva, which means sacrifice. And you have to look at that ultimately, whether it's the patriarch Joseph, whether it was Rama, okay, and even with the choices that Jesus made. And I had also been, I think in some of the readings, I think I remember saying about there may be some things that have to be sacrificed. They're not working. So it has to go. And it says that we can, induce and increase our karma, good karma, with seva or sacrifice. The seva could consist of doing the following: money to charities, meditations, reading scriptures, controlling our mind and the 5 senses. Remember I told you about the 5 is about constraint. If you look at the some of the readings I did about, and when I pulled different 5s, and I said it's about constraint or force. That ultimately when you refuse to do it the way that it could be done or should be done, then the 5 is like, here's this avenue, like here's the 4, here's the door, take the door, and you don't take the door. Okay, here's a window inside the door, to make sure that you get to where you need to get to. Okay. So in that chapter, after it explains about karma and then seva, it talks about someone really important. This 4th chapter of the Gita brings up Eklavya. Eklavya is considered the ideal student. He takes 7 arrows. He shoots them. And it impresses this other guy, right? He impresses Arjuna, which is the star, basically, of the Gita. Okay? So much so, he took the 7 arrows, he shot them, and what happened was he shot them at Arjuna's dog. And because of his skill in the archery, and Arjuna wanted to be the top, and he was with a master so that he could become the top. Blessed Arjuna. No shade on him or anything like that. But then he wants to know, well, who is this guy who shot like that? Because he's shooting on the level that, the same as me, as if he's had my teacher. And that, like I said, going back to the Joseph thing and many other things, being that, we're in an 11 year. Like I said, if you add up 2018, you get 11. So we're in an 11 year. That this year also, and that particularly this month, may come to highlight the fact that there are people who didn't have the training, who didn't have all the skills and everything that other people did, and yet they possess just as equal, but they're on the backside. And the reason why they're on the backside is because they may be like Eclavia. Okay? Like when Joseph got promoted, he was promoted after Pharaoh had a great hearing with his own magicians and sages and all of these other stuff. These men could not interpret Pharaoh's dream. This man who was in prison, he was the second one to hear the dreams, and then he interpreted them. And they were also about 7 and 7, which equals 14, which equals 5. Okay, and it ends up that because of the promotion that Pharaoh gave to the patriarch Joseph, it saved many people. It saved the Egyptian people, it saved Joseph's own people, and then a bunch of other nations from a famine. So that maybe at this time, ultimately, if we are being demoted or betrayed, or a job goes to someone else, a person goes to someone else that we love or whatever, that ultimately is because we're being prepared for something greater, like how Rama was. Rama had a very good outlook on this. And so did Eclavia. So Eclavia, which is from the Gita, he was the ideal student. He couldn't afford, he was like a jungle boy, okay? Like when we think of the Jungle Book, think, or Tarzan, think of Eclavia, okay? It's not to shade him or anything like that. It's just that he was not a royal prince like Arjuna. So he was not, had access to the things that, like the training, but he did want to be trained. Okay. And so ultimately him and, and Arjuna were trained by the same man, because Eklavya met, Drona, which was the teacher, the master. And he asks him, "Oh, will you teach me how to be a good archer?" And Drona basically tells Eclavia, "Well, you're poor and whatnot, and because of how he had been raised, I can't teach you." But he gives him like this good blessing and says, "Just think of me, think of what I'm teaching you, and then just study to be the best archer. You already are. You already are that. Now just go practice it and practice everything that you've seen me do so far." So that's basically, if I'm paraphrasing that right, that's basically what happens. So he's out there in the forest, in the wilderness too. Look at these wilderness stories, in the wild, uncultivated, away from people. And that may be what happens with you when you get your revelation or you get your help or whatever it is that comes about. So ultimately, he's out there. Okay? And so he's practicing, and that's how he's getting better and better and better until the one day when he does run into Arjuna. The point or the moral of the story is that, or at least what they put is that he ultimately, Drona gave him these particular rules, is that he could meditate, and or not. He gave him these particular rules as a result of the presence of Drona, just speaking blessing over Eclavia's life. Whenever he ran into a problem with the archery and practicing or anything while he was in the jungle, he would go and present his problem. He had made like an image of Drona, in his mind, and also I think an image, so thinking of him in this way, right? In the same way that we think about God, and maybe we don't make an image or something like that, but, or maybe, I don't know. I can't judge anyone. So, but thinking of God and the attributes of God, meditating on that in your mind, it says he would meditate until the resolution to his problems had appeared. So ultimately, the point of it was that how you know that you're really a great student is not because your teacher is there, which makes me also think of Joseph and his father going like this, that his father did not have to be there. Some people say it was like this. Some people say it wasn't that he just thought of his father. Okay? The same way that Eclavia thought of Drona when he had a problem. So that he just thought when Joseph's master's wife was trying to seduce him, he just thought of his father. Okay? and did the right thing as a result and maintained his integrity. And it says in the same way, this was saying interesting in the Gita, when it's talking about Eklavya, is that ultimately one of the responses that he gets from Drona when he runs into Drona again, because what happens is Arjuna and Eklavya run into each other. He says, "Who taught you to shoot so good like that and archery like that?" He says, "Drona." And so now Arjuna's like, "Wait a minute. When did Drona have time to teach him? Because he's been teaching me and my brothers, the Kaurava and the Pandava brothers. He's been teaching us. When was he teaching this cat, right? When was he teaching this dude?" Anyway, so he goes and he doesn't say anything to Eklavya. He goes to Drona. When he goes to Drona, Drona later on meets up with Eklavya. And he says, "Your learning has been very good. I am deeply satisfied. I am deeply satisfied." And is the godliness, is the Spirit of God inside of us saying, "Your learning has been very good. I am deeply satisfied. I'm deeply satisfied with the choices that you're making. Your learning, whatever you've learned so far, it's been very good." Can we feel that and say that when we meditate, when we think about things that we're doing? That may be crucial and helpful, especially getting through this time of cancer and getting through anything where we've had a challenge or we've had to step back or step down unfairly. Instead of drag around about it, let's be mobile and let's be humble like the nanoparticle, and let's move through it. And that the lower that we humble ourselves, the more influential we can spread out and be. That's something that came up for me as the more I studied this. So, and that we can remove not just our own karma, but the karma of others against us. Because look at Rama's attitude. Look at the patriarch Joseph's attitude. You know, he forgives his brothers, even though they betrayed him, even though he cried very deeply, even though he was separated from his family and he was separated from his father. He cried very deeply, but he forgave them. And that maybe forgiveness may be one of the most challenging things that we have to do at this time. But like the water itself, it's going to purify us. It will make us better. Okay? And that maybe things that people are going to be doing and deciding, it might want to make us like this. And stop the water, stop the flow. Okay? And put just deep iceberg type stuff inside of us. Okay? You know, look at his hands. They're folded. He's not open. He's not open. Okay? Or that maybe, like with the Sabbath, is supposed to be given a rest. There's remembering. There's keeping. That maybe someone doesn't remember us. Maybe they don't keep us. But how do we keep and remember ourselves in the process? Do we let go of ourselves too? Okay, because you let me go, then, well, now I don't keep we don't keep ourselves. That's not what Eklavya did. You know, and in the process of it, here's where his karma comes in with the sacrifice. When after Jonah says all this to him, he says, "Now you know what? I made a promise to Arjuna that he would be the best, even though it's obvious from all of this who's the best, even though it was not taught. I made him a promise. So can you help me keep my promise?" And, you know, just thinking about what the Sabbath as being for, and that Sab and Seva, it's not just about sacrifice. That's where we get the word seven, but it's also about promises and covenants and stuff. Can you help me keep my promise? And Eklavya says, "Yeah, sure, Drona. I respect you so much. What is it that you want?" He asks for his thumb. Now, with not having a thumb, he can't be the best archer anymore. We know that he is, but he can't be that anymore. Wow, I didn't know I would feel so sentimental about it. okay. I didn't know I would feel that sentimental about it. That ultimately, sometimes in our life, this is what's happening to us at the expense of other people. That the Cancerian time is really about ego. And that our ego may take a punch, an unexplainable, painful, painful. It may take a painful cut for someone who's much more egotistical or proudful or difficult. And how do we get through that? How do we get through that? What I thought was very interesting is just looking at, I have this favorite devotion of mine. Okay. For July 1st, which, like I said, I consider July just as belonging to Cancer, right? Here you are, dear Cancer. And when I was looking at what's considered the first day, which is the month of Cancer in Hebrew, is Tammuz. Okay? So in Tammuz, it has 2 days. The 2 days are centered around, which are the Av, which Av deals with the father, right? Av means father, like Avraham. Av means father. Okay? So Av means father. Let me write this down. Because we talked about the Sabbath, right? And maybe someone's not giving you a rest. Okay? Maybe someone's not remembering you. Maybe someone's not keeping you. Maybe someone is not setting you apart either as special. Because that's what, like when we have a holiday or Thanksgiving, we have special china. Don't eat that. Don't eat on that. Don't touch that. That's special. That's for Thanksgiving only. We have certain things that we save. And maybe someone's not going to do that for you right now. Now, with Sabbath, which is like Sapta and it looks like 7 as well, 70. It's present in over, I think, 72 languages. 70 languages and cultures or whatever. It looks a lot like this. But right in the middle is the Ab or Abba, which means father. The father of creation. Maybe even our own father that we might be having some issues with. Look how the sun, 1-3, and often the sun in different studies is, considered to represent the father. So we might be having issues with our father. Who knows? But Av, in this particular book here, for the date, it starts off with the date of Tammuz. Okay, and guess who they're talking about? They start off by talking about grace. And it does take grace to forgive, right? But they talk about Noah. Okay? And what I highlighted here is, it says grace is what emanates from a person when he acts godlike. That may be our challenge in a situation where we really have the right to be upset, but we have to be like Eclavia, we have to be like Joseph and be godlike. It is the light of the soul that is sensed by others from a person who allows his soul to guide his actions. And I would think that was actions and reactions. And then it says, this is page 172 of this book. This is why the trait of Shayin or grace is associated with Joseph, who I was talking about. A son of grace is Joseph. Genesis 49:22. It says, of whom it was said regarding God was with Joseph, and he became a successful man. His master perceived, and look at this, because here we go with this mastery, that there's different kinds of his master perceived. His master perceived that God was with him, and whatever he did, God made succeed in his hand. Remember how I was talking about the master droner? You are very good. Your learning has been very good. I am deeply satisfied. And it says, Pharaoh said to his servants, could we find another like him, a man in whom is the Spirit of God? That we're coming upon a time where and maybe even the water is there to wash and to redeem many hurts that we've had. Because we're coming upon a time where we may meet a Pharaoh type character with whom, if we haven't dealt with anything that's made us icy like this, right? That we won't be able to help them like we should. We won't be able to give them what they need. Okay? Pharaoh was in need of help. And maybe that even if you are being scaled back, like Rama was at the time, he didn't receive the kingdom at that time, he received it later. To be prepared that ultimately anything that you've went through that may be devastating or hurting is to be prepared for something bigger or greater. That ultimately at the time, that gifts that you had, they need to serve a greater purpose. But those gifts have to be steeled and tested. You notice that Rama went into the wilderness and then and then after he returned back, then he was given the kingdom. But he had to go through losing his wife and fighting with the evil Ravana, had to fight with him and all of these things that he went through. And after he went through that and the kidnapping and all of this, then he was able to return. Similarly, even though right before Christ was led into the wilderness by the Spirit to be tempted, also the devil, the wilderness, the wild, the forest, uncultivated area, to be tempted of the devil, before he left, he had just been baptized. It was like a coronation. It was a big thing. It wasn't just like baptized in water. There was the opening of the heavens, a door being opened right then. Okay, and speech and all of that good stuff. And then he went over to be tested. Those skills, those talents, that gifts, that ability that he had to save, to redeem, it had to be tested first. Then he could come back and return and use them, and that's what he did. And it says that he went about doing good. Okay, so ultimately I think it's about, the feeling that I'm getting is that it's about acing the grace lesson this month. That we got to ace it. Ace it as in master it, as well as ace is the beginning of the card deck. We have to begin with grace, and then we've got to master it. We got to master it. We got to master what it is to grace, because that's what Eclavia totally represents. That he would be so willing. He didn't say, well, no, why are you asking for my thumb? Just for some royal prince? And sometimes we can feel like that when we are dealing with people who, because of royalty, and we work so hard, and we love so hard, and then some, they didn't do what we did. They didn't go without what we went without to get what we got. And yet we still have to be graceful. We still have to show the grace. That's when our God, not because everything is handed to us and it's easy for us. Right? I don't know. Something for us to all pray about and think of. While I was doing that, then I started to read also this book here. Okay. Yes, because I am Latina, right? So, it's by Andrea Valeria. This is about the zodiac. So I was reading about Cancer, and amazingly, look who she brings up. She brings up Arca de Noah, okay, and the Ark, okay. So she brings that up, and then she says, conseguir y consumir son dos cosas diferentes. To obtain, to get something, and to consume something. They are different things. Y la luna, así como te cuida, puede orillarte a cometer locuras. That when the sun is involved, we really have to be careful because it influences, no, sorry, not the sun, but the moon. When the moon is involved, which the moon is 1 plus 4 is 5, 5 is constraint. That's what she's saying. That with the moon involved, it may be hard to be a little constraining and to pull back. We might act more out of our emotion. Okay. And, she's bringing this up to ultimately, before she starts talking about that, what she brings up is emotional spending. And how, say that you're in the ark. She says the arque de Noé, okay? And you have to fix it. Y fíjate bien si lo pagas en efectivo, which is you have to pay for it either with cash or con tarjeta de crédito, a credit card, okay? And she's talking about if you're using plastic, which is the credit card, you have to be careful, be watchful, okay? Be watchful about things on the surface, doing things that maybe seem like, okay, it's just on the surface, it doesn't mean anything, but actually it has a whole lot of depth because it's coming from an emotional place. It may be on the surface like the moon, but it may look like this big black hole, and how you can get into spending, okay? Because ultimately what she says is that Cáncer nutre necesita nutrición, y esta palabra es clave para sobrevivir físico y moralmente. That ultimately the Cancer season, the sign, is about nourishment. And if you've been betrayed or hurt, you certainly need nourishment. You need meditation, and we require that nourishment of both, heaven from the Father, that sense. So she says Cancer is about needing nourishment and nutrition. Okay? And it's key to your physical and your moral survival. That to survive as a moral, to still operate as a moral. Okay? To still operate with your ethics intact. To still operate physically. You have to start looking at what you nourish, what's nourishing you, okay? And your nutrition. Okay? Nourishing is dealing more with your emotions, right? But then nutrition is dealing more with your physical body. How you nurture or nourish yourself physically. Okay? And that it's crucial for survival. It's key to your survival. It's key to your ethics, your emotional health, your physical health. That's the focus. And that's what's going to come into challenge. And we often see, like, this was the first, Joseph represents the first of captivities of being sold, with as far as the Israeli narrative, or the Israel narrative in Judaism. He represents the first, like the first actual physical one. The literal or the spiritual one occurred in the Garden of Eden, of course, but that's what he represents, being sold, captivity, right? And it's a captivity, if you look at a lot of the stories of captivity with, Judaism and whatnot, many of the stories always surround their physical and emotional health. They are around people who sacrifice to gods and things like that, and they may serve them or work for them as servants, but they can't eat what they eat. And then they're still trying to keep their code, the Sabbath and reading their scriptures. They're still trying to keep that code. Okay? But it's in captivity. It's the same, still having those gifts, that light, but in a form of captivity. Okay? Okay, so with that being reviewed, let's see. What else? Yeah, I'm looking at, okay, ultimately, let's say we went from redemption to an ardent desire to learn. And look at how Eclavia was. He just had a desire to just learn, to learn, to learn. Joseph would not have survived being in Egypt if he would have just been stubborn about only what he already learned, that we're in a constant state of learning, and that we have to keep doing that in order to get through whatever this represents, this, whether it's betrayal or whatever. We have to be in a constant state of being open and being fluid, and also letting things humble us, not humiliate, but humble us, to reduce down. Okay, that a lot of extra and a lot of too much, that will probably be literally too much for us. Okay, so I did. I'll just do it again, just to on screen, just shuffle up right quick. And cut the deck because I was interested in doing that as well, and just seeing, since I pulled 5 cards, the 5 cards related to 4, and I pulled the 5. Okay. Then I've got the archetypos, just to see. And I thought also it might be really crucial to look at that. Ultimately, maybe these represent different type of personalities during the month of the Cancer that we're going to run into. We'll run into a Leo. We'll run into another fire sign. I mean, not a Leo, sorry. Fire sign, which may be Leo, Sagittarius, or Aries. We might run into someone like this. You might run into somebody like this. You might run into somebody like this who's heavy on their emotions, much more than you, dear Cancer. We also might run into Cancer's a water sign. You might run into some fellow water signs. You might have some interactions with these particular characters. Maybe that's why also they are 4s, because maybe during the next 4 weeks, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Take that off for a second. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is what you might also have to do within the world as well as within yourself to make it, right? Okay. All right, and I don't think I cut the deck, so let me cut that deck there. Okay, so let's start looking into this. To go ahead, looks like we're already about an hour in. With all that information, lots of reading, lots of revelation. Okay, so I'm going to come back and then we'll go ahead and do the spread.